It's now 4:30, everyone. The April 28th, 2015 meeting of the Moorhead Public Service Commission is hereby called to order. Could I have a motion, please, concerning the agenda?
I move we approve the agenda.
Okay.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those approve the same sign. That motion carries. With regard to the consent agenda, I, for one, would like to take item 12 off the consent agenda. Any other revisions?
Is that the one I mentioned, Bill? Did I send you an email?
Oh, okay.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda with the alteration as
Okay.
suggested.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, the same sign. That motion carried. Are there any customers to be heard? Seeing none. Any recognitions, Mr. Schwann?
No.
Thank you. Any old business, Mr. Schwann?
No, sir.
Members of the City Council, welcome, Heidi.
Thank you.
What have you got to report tonight?
Let's see. Well, last time I was here, I had discussed the sidewalk art project that the city and an arts organization in town was working on, the mayor's arts task force or something to that effect. I had just given you a heads up that they might come looking for some support, but I am very happy to let you all know that they have met their goal of over $14,000. So they probably won't be coming to ask you all for any financial support.
Let's go back to that word probably.
Well, I don't ever want to say never.
Okay. Spoken like a true politician. Okay.
But I do want to bring up the second part of that project, which is the utility box art project.
I saw that in the newspaper. Are those our utility boxes?
Well, not unless they have, obviously, your consent and your best wishes.
Okay.
So that will be something that the group will probably come to you and ask you about down the road. Because right now, they're just looking at one utility box by the Moorhead Center Mall that is city-owned.
Okay. Were you aware of this, Mr. Schwann?
Well, I was aware of the agenda item, and I saw some of the utility boxes there, and I mentioned it in the GM report that we would have certain criteria we would want to make certain of before they would paint them. So we've got a number of criteria. I outlined them in the general manager's report.
So to address Mr. Baki's concern about water towers looking like smiley faces, are we going to make sure that we have some kind of control?
It's going to be a big smile.
And we're going to call it less.
Well, we have not approved, any painting of any other transformers, and we do have, in our rules and regulations against that. We like green, utility boxes. So, I mean, art on the boxes would have to be, approved as a deviation from the standard. And there's certain reasons for, them to be painted like they're painted. And of course, there's, high voltage markings on them. There's switch numbers and those types of things that are identification numbers that are on them that we wouldn't want covered up. And then, who's going to take care of them in 5 years when the paint fades, because we have standard green, we repaint them, so we may be covering up art in the near future. So, I mean, we would have some concerns about that.
These all appear to be insurmountable, or rather surmountable, with a little time and effort.
I mean, it depends on what the...
Actually, I think those green boxes are fairly ugly. I mean, anybody other than our lineman in the back and an engineer...
No, Joe, the boxes are ugly, not you.
He said that. Anyway.
So, I mean, there would have to be standards on the paint and, do you seal them so that the sun doesn't degrade the paint and those types of things, so.
Well, considering how degraded mine looks in the backyard, I would assume that that's not a big problem.
Okay.
Okay. And I understand the FM Area Foundation was a large contributor to that fund. That's an organization that very few people know about in this community. It's a wonderful organization. Unfortunately, I know the guy who leads them in the form of Tim Beaton, but aside from that, they do wonderful work for our community. They're involved all over the place, and what a great way to spend some of the money that they have.
Yeah, it definitely was nice to see, not just individuals contributing, but businesses as well as nonprofits.
Right.
Real small nonprofits were stepped forward and did what they could with the limited budgets they had. So it was definitely was nice to see the community in all aspects step up and speak out.
It was fast, was it 9 days or something? Or less than that?
Yeah, about 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks.
Personally, I'd still like to see limericks, but I don't know if I can get beyond the scope of.
Well, you're welcome to submit a limerick.
A limerick or
We're
two?
not- I can't guarantee that it would be chosen.
Okay, I can live with that. Okay. Anything further?
I don't believe so.
Okay, thank you, Heidi. Members of the Public Service Commission, anything to report? Perfect. Mr. General Manager.
Other than the painting of the boxes, which is included in the general manager report, item number 1 was Capture the Sun. We did have a community informational meeting here Thursday before last, or was it last Thursday? I'm trying to think. Was it over a week ago? Okay, so Thursday before last, and we had about a dozen signups at that time for the Capture the Sun Solar Garden project. We're looking for 33 signups at a minimum, 66 signups to do the project, and then we can actually take more than that. Right now, we have about 30 signups, so we're about at the minimum that we would need to do a project. We are going to send out a letter. Every resident in Moorhead, every business in Moorhead will get a letter asking them if they'd be interested in signing up for this program. Like I mentioned, we can handle about 200 right now. So I'm thinking that if we send it out to the whole community, we could approach that 200. So just so you're aware of that, we'll keep you up to date on how that's going.
It was great to see the coverage in a forum about Park Rapids, who was doing their second installment already.
Yep, I think
so-
Lake Region, I think
Lake Region.
cooperative, yep.
Yeah, so there definitely seems to be a demand on it, so it's good to see that we're going to do a little bit more advertising for it as well. It's a good thing, so.
Yeah, you'll see it in a variety of places. I had mentioned at the Moorhead Business Association meeting, and the Chamber's going to put it on their website. We had 3 commissioners there. That was real nice, and had commissioners sign up.
Your mic is up.
Excuse me. Yeah, so we had, we're doing a variety of advertising, and it was a good public meeting. We are going to hold another informational meeting after we send the letter out, so we'll have, because I think there will be questions that people have on, what is this? How much is it? Is this a good deal? Tell me a little bit more about solar. I drafted the letter that's going to go out to all the customers, and it really is hard to put together the financial information on this package. I've looked at how other utilities have done it, and when you look at a program like this, you're not necessarily looking at a really good payback. You're trying to do something to help the environment. And so you won't see a lot of financial information. So if somebody's interested in what the payback is, et cetera, they're going to really have to come to that informational meeting and get that information. But it is a really good deal for people to sign up, right now, because the commission is providing an incentive. So like ours compared to Lake Region's, their panel cost was $1,500 each. So they're selling them in, like a half a panel. Our panel cost is $480. So, we're a third of theirs. So, and the paybacks are better than theirs as well. So, people should look into it. But everybody will get a letter, and they can call and ask us questions.
Les?
And who gets panel number 1?
I believe
Hi, Ralph.
Commissioner Meeland was the first one to sign up. And he actually chose 2 panels.
I've threatened it. And like I said at the meeting too, I grew up in Germany. Germany now is at 20% of renewables. And I always wanted to have solar on my house, but I don't want to puncture the roof. And I don't want to have to deal with it. So this is a great way and a cheaper way on top of it for me to do it. So and I know what the payback is. 20 years I'll be, 35. You know, I may never see the payback, but it's the right thing to do, and I hope we'll get a lot of people signing up. On that note, have we had any interest from the local media to actually talk about it a little bit? I haven't seen anything in the paper.
Well, Fox was here and did a really nice job on their program. We haven't had any others, but I'm guessing that, you know, when we do the other informational meeting and we send out this letter, we're going to get some more attention.
It was the lead story on Fox.
It was the lead story on Fox. They did a really nice job. The reporter was very interested and excited about the technology and you know, so she did a very nice job.
And I know along those lines, and it won't affect us, but there's a big announcement apparently from Tesla coming out on Thursday about in-home batteries, where owners of solar panels can actually charge their batteries overnight and then use the energy during the day. So it's coming. Stuff is coming, which is really good.
Yep.
So.
The other
Wait a minute.
Tesla.
They're gonna solar charge the battery overnight when the sun
No,
isn't
they're going to
shining.
solar. No. For solar, you have to do it during the day when the sun is up.
Right. I know that, but you
And
said
then use
overnight.
it. I'm sorry. They're going to. I was being fast. So
This
they're
is
gonna
a
charge it up
tough,
during the
tough
day.
crowd.
So the way that solar works is you have to do it when the sun is up, which is
Yes.
usually during the day.
Yes.
And then they use the energy overnight. Sorry about
Okay.
that.
Well, and the other thing that, you know, Tesla, if there's a lot of those batteries out there and people plug them into their homes at night when power is relatively cheap, and then if they keep their car plugged in during the day, they can actually get credit for it on the difference in the price at night versus the day. We don't have time of use rates right now, but if that technology took off, every utility would develop time of use rates and, you know, charge less during the evening and then buy it back from them during the day. So it's interesting.
They actually talked about Pacific Gas and Electric giving, so the batteries right now about 12 grand that they currently have, and that's, I think the announcement is going to be a much lower rate. But Pacific Gas actually is giving a 50% rebate on the $13,000 battery because they want to use that for, you know, shave off the
Peak shaving.
piece.
The other interesting thing too I was going to mention was we do have another Moorhead resident that's going to put a solar panel in their backyard. And that same person called up and said, hey, can I buy a couple panels at the community garden? So, you know, very excited about the project, and we'll have more spokespersons, I think, to speak on the benefits of this. Question?
Did you expand the payment options? Did you expand the payment options from the meeting we had till current?
What we did is the payments were going to be over 4 months, and we extended that out to 12 months. And so we got rid of the 4-month one, trying to keep it, you know, very simple. And we looked at what some other utilities were doing, including Lake Region, and it seems like if you extended it out, it would get closer to the president's thought process of getting that price down. So, and the other option too is for people that don't want to spend the money, because $480 on a new technology can be more than what someone wants. But if they want to support renewable energy in Moorhead, they can also sign up for our Capture the Energy program, which is $5 per month or $250 a month. They can select, I believe, and then they can support renewable energy that way. And it really does support renewable energy because part of what we're using to fund that incentive for people to get into Capture the Sun is from that, what others are contributing. So, good question. That's all.
That's all?
Yep.
Thank you. That brings us down to item 7E, which is to accept the report on the Heritage Garden and the amphitheater project. And I see we have somebody here to speak to that.
Yes, well, and let me get to that item. But Colleen Sheehy is here, and she can come to the podium if she
Come on
wants
up,
to
Colleen.
give an update.
I'd ask that you identify yourself for the people at home.
Colleen Sheehy, Director at Plains Art Museum.
And if you want to start, Colleen, you can. Otherwise, if you want me to kind of give an update, I could do that as well. But
Tell us where it's at,
I'll
Colleen.
start. I want to thank MPS for these 4 years that we've been working for this creation of a garden of some kind somewhere around the power plant. And we've together waded through a lot of ups and downs and new directions at that site. But I can say confidently that we are moving forward and the garden is going to be built this summer. So we're excited about that, and I want to thank you all for working with us to this point in the city of Moorhead and the Park District. So tomorrow evening, Rob Fisher and Kevin Johnson are coming into town, and we'll be working with Sue Leggett and Chris and Travis and others on the MPS staff to look at the site, do the final finessing of the land, prepare it for the planting of grass, and we're also in the midst of recruiting volunteers and recruiting plant pledges for the heritage garden beds. And we're planning that we'll be planting there the weekend of June 6th and 7th. And then as the summer proceeds, Kevin and Rob will be making the cement forms, putting the pieces that were saved from the power plant on them. We'll be doing some more planting of trees and the final details. And we already have events planned. And I also want to thank MPS. We did receive one of the grants to support an event that will be Thursday, July 30th, and it'll be kind of the grand kickoff and dedication. There still may be a few details that we have to finish off, but we wanted to have a public event, kind of a ribbon cutting ceremony. And Holly Heidkamp has said that there's already 2 film events planned for the amphitheater, one in July and one in August. So we're moving ahead.
What a great use for that space. Bess, were you going to say something?
No, other than thank you for your patience as well. I know it was trying at times. Where are these objects stored that we took from the old power plant?
I believe they're still just inside the fence where the old plant was. I mean, they just basically took them out of the building and put them next to the fence that was
Outside?
there. Outside,
Yeah.
yep.
Okay, because that's where they're going to be.
Yep,
So
yep.
it wouldn't matter. Okay. You will make sure that we all know when events take place there, I assume?
Yes. What's the
Good.
best way to do that? Should I
Probably through
contact?
Bill.
If you,
Okay,
yes, if you
through Bill.
contact Bill, we'll make it as a part of
Yes, we-
our event schedule.
Yeah, and definitely on July 30th to have you there as part of the dedication and festivities.
And we'd like to announce it at our meetings.
Okay,
So-
definitely. We'll keep you up to date on that.
And I personally join with Les in saying thank you for your patience as we went through this up and down battle that we went through to try to get this, but I think the end product is going to truly be worth it, and it'll be great to see that at that location. Good work, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Anything further, Bill?
Not
Is that
unless
the one
there's,
how we're going to paint the smiley face on? Or is that the other one?
That's closer to Les's home.
This is it, okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Quinn.
very much.
Could I have a motion to accept that report?
I move to accept item 7E.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same sign. That motion carries. Brings us to item 8, to approve agreements with MRES for transition of MPS's transmission facilities into the Southwest Power Pool. Mr. Schwant?
yes, this is Mr. Schwant and Mr. Schmidt. We'll bring Travis up here as well. And Nancy's been involved in this as well. This is a significant item that has to do with WAPA joining the Southwest Power Pool. And as they're joining the Southwest Power Pool, there's an opportunity for Moorhead Public Service to be reimbursed for our approximately 30 miles of 115,000 volt transmission line that's in the Fargo-Moorhead area here. It goes all the way out to West Fargo, and it also goes about 6 miles south of town. What we have proposed here, basically, and we've already begun this, so it's somewhat ratification, is that we're working with MRES and 4 other members of Missouri River Energy Services to put together all the documents in order to provide this to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission to get their approval. All that MRES is charging us is the cost divided by 5 of the outside consultants that they're using in order to accomplish this. So they're not charging us anything for their staff time, which is significant as well, because they're doing all the plan management and coordination of this. But basically, we've had to put together an assignment agreement where we're allowing them to use our facilities and place them into the documents that FERC uses to, well, actually, that SPP uses to coordinate the use of our facilities, and then a revenue sharing agreement. So that's what you see here. I've gotten into quite a bit of detail other than just a kind of a broad overview, but Travis can kind of give another view of this whole document as well.
Travis Schmidt, Electrical Engineering Manager. Like Bill said, it's, you know, there's 3 agreements here that we're looking to get approved tonight with your approval. Basically, like Bill said, it's a professional services agreement which allows for the outside consultants' help. That costs us about $55,000 for MPS. There's also the facilities assignment agreement. Again, that's basically assigning our functional control of our facilities to MRES, which will then in turn give that functional control to the Southwest Power Pool. And then along with that, there's a revenue sharing agreement, which will allow us to get reimbursement from the use of our 115 transmission line, which right now we're expecting to be about roughly $200,000 a month starting October 1st of 2015, as long as everything is approved by FERC.
Now, if you say that we're going to be reimbursed for that line or paid for that line, who maintains it once we get into that?
We still maintain it.
So it still remains our property?
It's still our property. It's still under our operational use, our operational control. We just basically give them functional control so that if they need to run power through it, they've got the abilities to and the agreement to. We didn't have that ability with WAPA. They never had any type of an agreement for that, so we never saw that reimbursement either. So it's actually, it's a good opportunity for us, because no matter what, we're going to go into the Southwest Power Pool as long as FERC approves everything. Other members that go in there that don't own their transmission line won't see this reimbursement, so it's actually a good thing for us.
Okay.
It's an interesting nuance that really we get the benefit because WAPA is now going into Southwest Power Pool. Since we've got a looped system, and it's not just radial, so it's not just feeding into Moorhead, it's actually looped, there's transmission flows that happen all the time. And even when WAPA was not in SPP, they knew and we knew that there was looped flows there, but they had a policy they wouldn't reimburse for it. Even though we asked them and said it would be appropriate that they would. They just decided never to do that. Now, when they're joining SPP, SPP's policy is that anything above 69,000 volts and not a radial feed will be reimbursed. And so we have 30 miles of relatively new transmission line that we'll get reimbursement for. WAPA's kind of changed their tune. Now they say, well, you know, it's totally appropriate that you guys get reimbursed for that. You know, as long as it's in that whole pool from Montana to Texas, and they're not reimbursing us directly. So, and the $200,000 per month, so that's $2.4 million per year. You know, that's going to help us replenish our reserves, hold rates down. There will be an increase in our transmission costs, however, that we don't know what those are yet, because starting October 1st, that's when we join SPP. We were paying a transmission charge from Western Area Power, but because of the Bakken and everything going in to SPP, there's going to be an increase from what we paid WAPA. That's going to offset some of this. We just hope it doesn't offset all of this. And we also hope it's going to be phased in. So maybe in 2015, you know, we've got, you know, a net positive. on that, but we'll kind of keep you up to speed on that. We have really no idea what the net is going to be at this point, because, I mean, everything is changing. WAPA's going into SPP.
Les?
Just happened to think of this. We're getting paid because it's a loop. What happens while you're working on the line movement over in West Fargo? That's part of the loop, is it not?
Yeah, it's a,
Yeah, that's more,
So while we're working on it, do we still get the money?
well, and actually, we'll have, because this doesn't start till October 1st,
And you
well,
hope
we
to be
should
done
actually
by
have
then.
that construction should be
Okay,
done by
thank
that
you.
point in time.
think-
However, if we do have other type of work, that's more of an operational situation, and they won't nick us for that, or
the
shouldn't. be.
reimbursement is a financial transaction based on allocations. So I don't think the operational, having it out of service wouldn't be very long anyway.
I agree.
And they're not metering, I shouldn't say they're not metering, because
They're
they are
metering the
metering.
flows.
But I don't think they're metering the loop, they're metering the total, so I think we're okay.
Because the loop would be open while construction.
Loop would be open, but they're not going to go into that detail.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Anderson?
As I read through this a couple of different times, I kept looking for the boogeyman.
Right.
Yeah, there's got to be one. And maybe it's the last line about rates, but is there any concern? Is it all about efficiency and so forth? Or where's the benefit and who's benefiting the most for this?
This, I don't necessarily think there's a boogeyman out there, because it's really one of those cost shifts that happens when there's a major change in the industry. And the major change is that WAPA, after, being around for 70 years, is going into a regional market. And that regional market has different rules than what WAPA had for its customers. And you've got, you're the largest member of MRES. There's only 5 members that actually have transmission. So we're getting a reimbursement. We're getting the largest reimbursement because we have the largest amount of transmission. And all the other 55 members that don't have transmission will share in the rate increase for the transmission. So it's going to end up being what it is. Whatever they're going to throw our transmission costs along with everybody else's transmission costs from here to Montana to Texas in a bucket, mix it around, divide it by the number of kilowatt hours that are metered in that big geographic area, and whatever it turns out to be is what we're going to pay. We're just fortunate to be part of the revenues that, we're sharing in the revenues, but the majority of those revenues are going to pay the people that own the transmission from here to Montana and here to Texas. So we're a small player in all that. I mean, you can see the big dollars we're talking about to transport energy. It's probably about 25 to 30% of your electric bill is transmission. It's a big number, and we're just a small player. So I think it's just, we're going to have some offset, but we hope it's not offsetting all of it, and I don't think it will be.
Les?
Speaking of transmission lines, just a thought, and you may or may not know the answer. When is the one from here to wherever down by the cities going live? Do we
Good
know?
question. It is live.
It is live?
It just went live in probably the last month, because I was down at a MRES meeting, and
Hold on a sec. For those that are listening, that's the power line that's been under construction for the last several years along I-94, going
Yep.
from here down to
Monticello.
Monticello.
yeah, we'll put an update in the GM report, because I just remember now, I was talking to Brian Zaveski down in MRES, and that's the only reason I knew it was live, was because he's an engineer at MRES, and he was actually able to operate one of the switches. They let him do that to commemorate it. So he was excited about it, but it actually is live now. So, and it may not be all of it that's
I
live.
think it's live all the way to Alexandria. I don't think it's all the way out to the Buffalo substation
Okay.
up by Mapleton.
So yeah, it's probably live from Monticello to Alexandria. It may not be live from Alexandria to to the Bison substation in Fargo.
You know, I think an awful lot like Mr. Anderson, which is a frightening thought in itself, but, yeah, I know. And normally, when we talk about an agreement or a contract, there is a mutual meeting of the minds between the parties, and that's what the document is supposed to memorialize. And the question comes, are we sure we want to sign this before we know what the net results are going to be?
The,
Timing is everything, including with contracts.
yeah, we've looked at this closely. The MRES board has approved this. We were given the opportunities to look into the documents. John Bolger has reviewed them all. If you trust MRES, then you probably can sign this document. We're actually, like I mentioned, the largest of the 5, and we're paying only 1/5 of the costs. So, I mean, they really could have prorated those costs of the professional service agreement. They didn't. The details are pretty much how we outlined them. I mean, the rate, we're not going to have any say in what the future rate is. All they are helping us do is to add up all of the transmission assets that we have, make sure we don't forget any, so that we can throw our transmission assets in the bucket and we can get a reimbursement from SPP. We're a small player. You cannot sign it, but it's like there's really no reason why you wouldn't. There's nothing else to gain by holding out or anything.
Yeah, you just lose that revenue sharing or
Yeah,
that
you
reimbursement for the
If
transmission.
you lose the revenue for even a couple of months because you didn't sign the agreement, you're out $500,000. So, I mean, and these things are probably going to evolve, and you're going to have to stay active. And it's MRES staff that has the technical expertise to help us. So you're kind of biting the hand that feeds you.
Nobody's talking about biting hands. I just want an answer to the question.
Yeah. No, I think it's good, but I think it's about as good as you're going to get, and waiting is going to help you. And
This is the guy who sells used cars. Did you have a comment?
Yeah, well, I mean, and the only thing about this agreement is we're just going to pool the resources to get the stuff done, right? I mean, we're not making any commitments prior to having a final agreement in the first place. And the other one, when we talk about the increase in power or purchase, is it transmission or purchase power costs that may go up?
Purchase
on
power.
this one?
Yeah.
Purchase power.
Transmission.
No, purchase power costs. We'll go, we're talking about the purchase power costs that may increase based off of when SPP is finally our power provider.
Okay.
So it's purchase power, not from transmission, right?
No,
and we have no say in that anyway, right? I mean, that's going to be whatever is going to be from the provider.
Correct.
So,
So he's convinced you?
He is totally convinced me, yeah. I wish I were a lawyer.
We wish you were too.
Yeah. John?
2 questions. As far as when we receive this income, how is it going to be recorded? Is it rental, or is it lease, or how is that going to show up?
Other
on our
revenue.
Revenue.
Nancy, please come to the podium.
It will, Nancy Lund, Admin and Finance Manager, it will be recorded as other operating revenue. So what we'll see, well, this past year is, in our financials, what you saw was a breakdown of our purchase power into purchase power and transmission. And so we'll receive this as revenue to offset some of those transmission costs, which are part of that purchase power bill.
Okay. And with that, then, if there is a positive between the revenue and the cost, are we going to, instead of just throwing that into the bucket, per se, have budget discussions as far as where those dollars should be reserved or allocated to, or whatever the case may be, as far as?
Well, I would assume those would be going into reserves, at least initially, until we have a use for them. And our budget committee would probably spend a lot of time on that subject.
And it's going to be an interesting budget committee discussion, because we probably aren't going to have good information on what the net is going to be at budget time. And we delayed a 2.5% increase that was supposed to happen this year to next year. So I'm guessing that you're going to end up with a 2.5% to 3.5% increase for next year, at the same time having some idea that there may be some net coming in. But I think that's where you're going to probably end up.
What you're saying is not to bank on it?
I wouldn't bank on it for 2016. Now, if we do end up with a net, it would, like President Norman mentioned, go into our reserves first. We're actually behind on our accumulation of reserves because we have a policy on that. And so I think you're okay probably through 2016, putting that into reserves, and then you'd have to, in 2016, for the 17 budget, figure out what you're going to do and how you're going to distribute it. Because, I mean, you would have the opportunity to see where you're going to place all those dollars. Good question.
It'll be a good challenge for the Budget Committee this year, I think.
Yes, well, they've been challenged before.
For other reasons. So when do you think we will know about the additional cost? I mean, are we talking this year still? Is it a?
No, I mean, they aren't even going to get FERC approval until right before October 1st. So I think October 1st, you're going to see a reimbursement start based on our assets and based on their current rates. But then they're going to collect all those assets, divide it all out, and then we're hoping that they say, we're going to phase in these rate increases because they don't want rate shock happening to all these other utilities out there. You know, so we're hoping that they phase them. We don't know if they're going to phase them, and that's why the net could be zero. But we're hoping they phase them, and we don't know what the total is. Mm-hmm. And they don't know what the total is until, and it could be months after October. So, I mean, it could be well into
So
2016.
at this juncture, all you can say is you're going to keep us apprised.
Right. And that is where MRES is helping keep track of that. And MRES themselves, I should have mentioned, there's 5 MRES member utilities, Moorhead's the largest, that are getting reimbursed. Well, MRES has transmission as well, and they're getting reimbursed too. So, I mean, they're going through this process really as the 6th player in this whole MRES.
So what share are they picking up?
They're probably donating their staff time in order to
You
help.
didn't answer the question.
I don't know if, I don't think they're
yeah.
paying a share.
Really?
They just charge us for their share.
Yeah. Oh,
Entertain a
absolutely.
motion?
Magnanimous of Mr. Heller. Yes, I certainly would. Are you ready to make one?
I would love to make a motion.
Go right ahead.
I would like to move approval of item number 8.
I would like to second that.
And I would like to call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same sign. Thank you, gentlemen, for
Thanks, Travis.
bringing that forward. Brings us to item 9, which is to approve a grant agreement with the Minnesota Department of Health for the North Buffalo Wellfield Generator Docking Station. Chris, please identify yourself.
Sure. Chris Knutson, Water Division Manager. So MPS has received about $70,000 in grant funds since about 2012 from the Minnesota Department of Health through the Clean Water, Land, and Legacy Amendment passed by the Minnesota legislature. This is another one of those grants, and we've used these grants for all kinds of different things. Security improvements at the well sites, water quality monitors for our river pumping station. And this is actually for a generator docking station that's similar to our river pump station that'll allow connection of a large diesel-powered generator to both of the well pump stations out there so that we can provide temporary power to those facilities during a long-term power outage, some type of crisis situation. So it's a good improvement and a good step in the right direction for improving resiliency during some type of incident like Wadena, where they had a significant tornado, a long-term power outage. They were able to, if you have the ability to power some of these facilities, you can provide water in a long-term power outage situation. So.
Okay. Rolf?
I have a question. Why are we using portable generators and not put a permanent one in?
That's an option. It certainly would be an option. I think the concept that we'll probably end up buying a permanent portable generator that we can move around to these facilities as needed. We don't have one right now, but the idea would be that we could maintain lease agreements for specific generators that if we needed them in an emergency situation, we just come get them. because the amount of, the main reason is budgetary, because a generator for that facility would probably be several $100,000. So, as opposed to, the total cost here is like 40.
Okay. Any further questions? Would any of you like to give a motion? Okay, is there a second to that?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mr. Bakke. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same sign. This brings us down to a relatively interesting item. To approve an amended policy on professional appearance, do we have a concern? Just a thought I'd ask.
No, this is an update.
As I look at this group up here, with clowns to the left of me, jokers to the right, as the song goes,
We're the clowns.
I'll have Nancy come up to the
Yeah.
podium.
I would entertain virtually anybody coming up here and stopping this conversation.
As she's coming up there, we have updated, commission policies, basically to make them a little bit more general and not so specific. And so, I mean, a lot of your policies you'll see are a paragraph in length. This is a similar one. However, there was some other updates that Nancy brought to my attention and thought we should at least put in our internal policy. But what you'll see is the policy has really just been scaled back to the general policy that says, Moorhead Public Services employees should look professional and neat. So maybe I did the thing for you.
You covered most of it. I would call this kind of a housekeeping item, where when we did union negotiations this past year, we changed the clothing reimbursement policy within the union contracts to basically just giving them an allowance. So we're not requiring, we're not monitoring the spending of that money and those type of things. So what we wanted to do is just incorporate that change into this policy and make it clear then, that employee is responsible for spending that money when it needs to be spent and coming to work appropriately clothed, and added safety into that at the same time. So minor housekeeping item, just to make sure we're passing that responsibility onto the employee to come prepared to work.
I'm assuming that Joe, for example, would send home line workers who aren't properly clothed in safety equipment. Is that correct, Joe? Yes. Okay. Brings to mind, go ahead, Les. Brings to mind a question I think that we also raised during our discussions with the unions. When a representative of Moorhead Public Service goes into somebody's home, you talk about being professionally dressed, do we have some kind of identification that they can bring with them or have with them so people know? For example, I mean, if Joe came to my house, I don't know if I'd let him in or not, for a lot of reasons, but do we have some kind of identification? Because we potentially are going into people's homes. And I'm assuming the same with Chris's people if we're changing out water meters.
The majority of the employees that do enter homes they are provided with clothing, work shirts that say Moorhead Public Service, and would probably identify them. However, we do not have them carry ID cards. So,
is that something we should look at in today's world?
We could take a look at that, yeah.
I think we should be concerned not only with the safety of our employees, but also with the safety of the people whose homes they're going into. Les?
Is this a reaction to a problem that exists, or be prepared for problems that might occur? I like asking that question on policy changes.
I think it's a great question. I mean, do we have a concern?
Well, no, I think it's more housekeeping. Nancy looked like she was going to mention something.
I never liked that word housekeeping,
We-
because too many things get thrown into it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's when you take the broom and sweep all sorts of things under the, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what housekeeping means.
Yes, we've experienced an incident or two in the recent past where an employee did not come with all his safety equipment provided and needed to go out and purchase that equipment.
Okay,
So he had to leave work to do that.
okay, thank you.
Okay.
But that's safety, right? That's different than professional appearance.
Yeah, it really is.
Safety, work apparel, some of it's, we provide a lot of the safety equipment, but there are a few things that could be in a gray area where they need to go out and bring those with them when they come to work each day.
I move approval, item 11.
Is there a second to Mr. Baki's motion?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same sign. That motion carries. Brings us down to item 12, which I asked to take off consent because I don't know either its genesis or need. And it raises some interesting questions in terms of what kind of organizational structure are we changing, what the impact is. This was not discussed with the HR committee that I am aware of, unless let's know something I don't know.
No, I sent Bill a note this morning.
And
early
we've just
afternoon asking
we've just initiated the construction season, which we all know runs up to snowball season. And I don't know how many changes we want to make in an organizational structure that may impact our efficiency in terms of construction. I mean, that's just me thinking about the construction season, how short it is. So why are we doing this?
Well, what you see over here in front of you is, the genesis of this is construction season coming up. And, we run a very efficient operation here, sometimes too efficient. What we're learning is with some of the turnover we've had with linemen and the turnover we've had with the locator position, is that we're not able to keep up with locating, and it makes us less efficient, doing line work as well. And I'll probably end up bringing Joe up here to basically say the same thing. But what we're looking at here generally is for the commission to approve the organizational structure to add a locator. The other things that you see on here are items that you've seen in the past that the HR committee has negotiated, and a number of things that just need to be updated. So, I mean, really the focus of this is number one, which is to increase the locator classification from 1 to 2. The bylaws of the commission have you approving the organizational structure, so I cannot add or delete employees without coming to you first.
I like that part.
Yeah, we do have a need, though, for additional locating, and, Joe can definitely provide all the details. We're talking about, 70 locates in a day, where a average locator can probably do 25 to maybe 30.
Does that mean that we'll still be subcontracting?
And a new locator probably does 20, and we have a new locator. Well, what we do is we supplement with other employees, including linemen, which takes away from the efficiency
I was
of
just
the
going to say,
linemen.
if we're in the construction season and our linemen are in charge of putting in new lines, taking them away to locate is not the most efficient way to do
Exactly.
things either.
Exactly.
Okay.
But it is a balance. I mean, Joe is allocating resources all the time. He will still have to allocate linemen in order to do locating when we have 70 locates in a day and they can only do, 50 or 60. He's going to have a lineman or a meter service technician or someone else that's trained to do that come and help out. And he does that routinely. This would be to add a locator permanently. And we've got concerns that way too, because it's like, okay, there's going to be certain days where there's 10 locates to do. What are you going to have that locator do during those days? Because before we've had, one locator, we supplement. Now we're going to have 2 locators, and we're going to supplement. The issue is we've got a brand-new locator, and Joe we just interviewed for locators, so he actually has people that he probably won't have to interview. He can call from that list, and it's just the time to do that. So we wrestle over these things a lot.
Well, I'm assuming if there's nothing to do, Joe's pickup needs to be polished every so often. So maybe if we can call Joe up here. The question I have, are there budgetary issues in here that are causing this?
No, it's more workflow, I would say. It's not.
Okay. Now that we have you up here, would you identify yourself for everybody at home, Joe?
Joe Moore, Electric Operations Manager.
Last year we sat here talking about the almost impossible task of finding good linemen to come on board. We even talked about the possibility of doing something, adding spiffs, which was turned down by the commission. Where are we at in terms of having an adequate number of linemen today? And I ask that question only because, I mean, we're taking on Oakport. Hopefully you guys have something to do out there in terms of new construction that you guys are doing.
Right now, we're down 2 linemen.
Two
linemen.
experienced journeyman linemen.
Yes.
We're down.
The second lineman, or the number 2 lineman leaving is done this Friday.
So we're losing another lineman.
Yes.
That gives us the 2 down,
Right.
okay?
How many do
So
we have then?
we have gone out looking for, we first asked for a journeyman lineman, and we thought we had one, and he delayed us a week and a half or so, and then he turned it down for whatever reason. And then with the time it takes to get back to the other people, they had already accepted other positions. So right now, we're in the process of interviewing eight other people that could come in, but they will have little or no experience. And that's what we can find right now.
Okay, you were going to ask a question?
Yeah, how long, I mean, you said we have to start the process again. How long did it take in a process between having an open position, posting position, getting an applicant, and then actually saying to the right applicant, yes, we want you? Are we talking days? Are we talking weeks?
We're talking weeks here. You're probably talking a month and a half to 2 months.
Can I ask why it takes that long? I mean,
There are
educate
certain-
me, because I'm not the brightest bulb up in this tree.
There are procedures that we go through. We have to advertise first, then we have to post it, and a lot of times the union will let us post at the same time that we advertise. So that's generally 2 weeks, 10 days. We try to get 2 to 3 weekends out of that. Then you set up your interviews, and once you get the interviews done and you select there, then you have to go through other things that Nancy goes through as far as background checks, and we can generally get a letter out, I believe, before we have the person do a physical, so we can kind of get that going, and then depending upon the time that they give to their employer, you know, you're probably looking at 2 months.
Well, so that means if you're going to be hiring a lineman, you'll be halfway through the construction season before it gets accomplished.
Well, we're past, we were able to go back into the pool, so we didn't have to advertise.
That's good.
And we were able to get people willing to come down here. Actually, we, for not having a lot of experience, it was nice to see the people that came in have very good potential talent.
You know, I
So-
remember one of the points you made, or somebody made, when we were talking about all these issues with linemen. And by the way, people, if you're out there in the community, if you have those qualifications, it's a well-paying job with a great organization. There was some concern because we have a fairly complex system here. We have both above ground and below ground, and it takes a while to get to know our system.
We have, the town is growing all the time. It's grown a lot since I started here, and I just tell our guys as they come in, we'll take a piece at a time and try to work on that and try not to get overwhelmed with the size. Because some people do come in and they go, oh my gosh, I'm not used to this. And I just say we'll work through it, and luckily we have good maps, and those are getting updated all the time.
I was just going to say, those have to be getting better with the GIS system, aren't they?
They are getting better. Introducing the tablets where the maps are changed every day, so the updates are there versus taping 8x11s in the map book so you can keep up to date and keep it safe.
So right now, when the guys go out in the truck, they have a laptop or a
No,
tablet?
right now we still have the maps. A few
Okay.
people have some of the laptops or the iPads
Okay.
with the maps on them, but that's just in the very beginning stages.
Okay. Is there anything that we can do Is there anything we can do to shorten that hiring process? Well, and Dave's a little off too, but yeah.
Oh, excuse me, that's a Nancy question if you want to come to the,
Well, and I understand that we have some constraints as being a municipal employer. At the same time, however, that seems like a long and cumbersome process if it takes too long. If we're talking 4 weeks to get somebody hired, if they're a qualified candidate.
I mean, the origin of this is a lineman leaving. It'd be nice not to have the lineman leaving, because we had another lead lineman, right, that left. And that's the one that just was, is done now. So, I mean, that's the problem. So, I mean, by the time,
Well, then you
once that
certainly don't
happens-
want to have the lineman out there doing the locates if we're losing lead linemen to begin with.
Well, I mean, Joe can talk to that. I mean, you have to at some point. I mean, you
Am I
do have
wrong?
to do.
Okay, you two.
We kind of switch here, but no.
Don't go away,
it's-
Nancy.
It's gotten to the point where we can't afford to take our linemen away from our work and stop our production. There's so much stuff going on these last 2 years that when I came to Bill and Nancy, I just said, we have to do something here because we can't afford to take our workers away from what they're supposed to be doing to move to another job. And over the last, it's been building up for probably 3 to 4 years, but over the last year it was getting kind of bad, and this year it just came in with a big bang. And
Well, you sort of told us that might happen at some point. Ralph, you had a
Yeah,
comment?
well, one comment and one question. First of all, in the unfortunate event a lineman is leaving, how much time do we usually get in the form of a notice? Is it, I'm leaving tomorrow? Is it traditional 2 weeks?
generally 2 weeks.
2 weeks. When we know that, do we start our process the time we get the notice, or do we start it when the person is actually leaving? I'm assuming it's a formal.
This time we started before because we already had the applicants in. Generally, we don't start until after.
After they leave?
Yeah. We might have,
We start when they give notice,
When you give notice.
normally.
within
days,
a
okay.
close time. Anyways, it's not, it varies there. I won't say it happens the day they give notice that it starts. It might be a week into it, but we do ask about advertising and running. There again, we have some union constraints where we have to advertise it in-house for a certain amount of days.
Did you have another question you were going to ask?
Does it make sense to advertise for linemen in-house when we don't have linemen in the first place? I mean, could we maybe go to the union and ask for a change to the contract that we can go out?
Well, and the union certainly knows the issues relative to capturing linemen. I mean, they've talked about it, they've talked about the lack of schools available and all sorts of other things. Nancy, don't mean to interrupt you.
That's a good point with the lineman position, because normally there are no internal candidates, but the labor agreement that we have in place requires us to post a vacancy internally for 11 working days, so a little over 2 weeks. So we do that. The union is very good about working with us, and if we don't think we have any internal candidates that will qualify, they'll allow us to post externally at the same time. So in the lineman scenario, we do that all the time.
Well, perhaps we should sit down and talk with them about the possibility of making those changes so that we can do this as expeditiously as possible.
I think we had suggested shortening that internal posting time this last negotiation, and it was turned down pretty quickly.
Well, but I don't
But
specifically remember that.
they do work with us, in getting the external going along with the internal when they don't think
Yeah,
there's a candidate.
I don't remember that, but Les?
If I remember correctly, the bargaining unit agreements cover more than linemen, and the same rules are in place. So for other positions, there may in fact be people within our organization that are qualified and eligible to apply. And if we start taking one group out of it, and in 5 years from now, that group has an abundance of prospective employees, we're creating a problem for ourselves.
Yeah.
I've got years of experience doing what these two do and with vacancies, and there are rules that are pretty finite, and the bargaining unit wants them followed, and I agree with that. So it didn't surprise me at all. It takes a month to find somebody. It doesn't surprise me
They
at
do
all.
work with us, though, in the cases where the linemen there's nobody else that's going to qualify. So we do internal posting. We start the external, and just as long as we watch our timing, we can probably cut, probably 7 working days off of the internal basically off of the internal posting to get to the external. So
As long as you
they
do
work
not
with us.
start the interview process of the external before the internal deadline.
Correct. We do
Yep.
not we close the internal posting first, deal with any candidates there before we start looking at external candidates.
I would think, let me skip around. Don't go away at Nancy or Joe, but I would think that the addition of another locator is almost a no-brainer, if for no other reason, that if a locator makes a mistake, that can be a very, very costly mistake. From our standpoint, it can be life-threatening, and I would assume that if we have to repair something that's improperly handled below ground, that it can be very expensive from that standpoint. So it would seem to me that to have our own people who are trained and get to know our system over time is probably the smartest way to do it. And, having watched a construction company that's doing work in my neighborhood for over a year and a half now, with the mess and the number of things that they've hit, including our lines, you have to wonder why mark them if the idiots can't find them, And so from that standpoint, and I'll say that to the owner of that company if I got the opportunity. But I mean, from that standpoint, it would seem to me that if we need that locator, we need them on a full-time basis, that we should do that. And that, to me, I don't know what the rest of the commission feels, but I think that's something we just hop on and do. I'm a bit more concerned about just approving the changes in the organizational structure without having more time to absorb it. I don't know, Les, if you feel the same way or not. Because we did not discuss this in the HR committee.
We did not. We can warn Bill not to do this again.
Well, it wouldn't be the first time we
No, it
warned him
wouldn't be
like
the first
that,
time the chairman
and he
warned
takes that very well.
Yeah.
And I don't want to do this as a form of a warning. What I'm saying is, if we need a locator, let's get a locator. I think that's, and whatever the three of you come up with in terms of, we need to do this, whether it's for locating water or locating electricity, we need to have somebody, I think that we control their training. I know that some of the people that have come by that have done locating for some of these contract companies, and I've talked with them, don't necessarily have a whole lot of experience in the field. And so I would think that the more we can, have somebody that we know and can control, the better off we're going to be. But I'd like to look at these other organizational things more in depth.
Well, and Joe mentioned it, but Joe and Nancy and I have been talking about this for some time. And more recently, we were looking at doing some contracting, but the costs right now are exorbitant for contracting.
Well, I don't think that's going to get any better in this particular labor pool that we have right now, and with all that's going on around us. And if things open up again in the Bakken, which they undoubtedly will, X number of years down the road, that's not going to help that situation. And if we're growing, I think we should have to get control over that locating situation. And then I don't know, I still think we should do some things, and perhaps even visit with the union, about what we can do to expedite that whole process of finding people that can serve in that capacity. Because to me, when you're in the construction season, a month is a long time to wait to hire people. And I know it's been frustrating for all of you.
If I could just say one thing, it would be nice, within the next, they talk about linemen retiring all the time in all the companies in the next
You're not
35
going
years.
anywhere.
There will be, more than likely, hopefully no one else will leave us for a while, but there will be retirements coming up within 3 to 5 years, and hopefully at that time, knowing the date of the retirement is generally a little farther out than a 2 weeks notice, that we could hopefully start that process a little quicker.
Yep.
And I think you're doing a good thing as well. I know we're going to be at the, we were at the Moorhead High School career fair today, talking to kids there. I mean, believe it or not, my son is a senior, and I've talked to some of his buddies who don't know what to do next. I'm like, here's one of the things you can maybe think about, right? So I think getting the word out is going to be a good thing as well.
Those are good careers, and normally working for excellent companies or municipalities, they really are. Certainly a lot better than some of the college-educated people who are coming out and making far, far less.
So how are we going to do this? Can I, for example, make a motion that we increase the number of locators from 1 to 2?
I think that's what one of the things you're asking for, is it not, Bill?
Yep.
And I think we want to respond to that, so I think that would be good, and I think the rest of it I'd like to table until Les and I have had more opportunity to see what it does.
If Ralph would like to move that, I would like to second it.
I would like to make that motion.
You know, I like the way the two of you like to do this.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, the same sign. That motion carries. What we're going to do now is something we've never done before. Yes, you have a question?
Yes, I have a question.
And I'd like to have you ask that.
After that lengthy discussion, have you gotten what you need to with your proposal to go forward?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Yep. And we have an HR committee meeting on Friday, and we'll put the rest of
Yes,
this
and
on
I'd
the
like to,
agenda.
since you brought up that HR committee on Friday, put that on our agenda. I'd like to also see the preliminary and marked up version of what we're going to be looking at that report.
Yep,
If I could see that, please. I thought you were going to ask if you could go back to being a lineman again. I don't know if Joe would hire you. Anyway, so we're going to go down and we're going to start something that we've never done before, and that's a strategic planning meeting that we will assume our relative positions down below. And we'll talk about some water system reliability issues. And, you know, that lengthy discussion we just had, I want the people of Moorhead to understand that we've got some of the best linemen available, and the same with our water crew. I mean, these guys work under terrible conditions in the winter months. We all know that. We've got best reliability, best water in this region. And, you know, that's all as a result of the work of the people in our community and the organization that work for us. And so we just want to make it better, and we want to make sure it stays that way, quite frankly. So let's go down and we'll start our strategic discussion. Bill, are you leading us in this?
Yeah, I can sure start it. Chris is up today because we've got a water issue. But if you want to move down there, we can kind of start the discussion.
Wonderful. Let's do that. Mr. Bakke would like to take a short recess. Let's do that. We'll take about a 5 or 10 minute recess. We'll.
Discussing how many generators it takes for all these wells. Slide over here.
I'm no longer in charge of
Yeah, I'm the facilitator. I was just trying to figure out if this is, you know, more casual or less casual being down here, because it's definitely different. I think the origin of this was Commissioner Bakke saying we should come down here and kind of have our strategic planning session in this type of fashion. Let me just give you just a really quick update on kind of where we are in the strategic plan. We do have a draft strategic plan that's got a lot of detail. Of course, it also is our action plan, our work plan for staff to work on. We sent out a survey saying what types of things would the commission like to talk about at a Saturday morning type retreat. And the top two were water issues. We had water supply was number one. Water infrastructure was number two. Then there was electric infrastructure and then electric supply. And then number 5 kind of rounds out the top 5 was retaining workers, which we just talked about. You know, linemen and engineers seem to be a... Seems like that's going up on the list. Yeah. And actually at the next meeting we will, and the HR committee is going to deal with this Friday, is look at the classification and compensation study that we just are completing right now. But that's number 5. That'll be at the next commission meeting after the HR committee sees that. But tonight, we want to talk a little bit about water infrastructure. The basis for that is something you've seen before, which is the Water Asset Management Plan, which you've approved before. Chris is going to give an overview of that briefly and then just jump in with questions. But I mean, you know, but that was number 2 on the list, so Chris, take it away.
All right. Chris Knudsen, I just prepared a few slides at the end of the packet for this discussion, but I wanted to keep it pretty open for whatever direction you all would like to head with it. I just basically wanted to kind of just start off with just a little recap of what the WAMP is, kind of how we got to where we are, and what are the long-term plans. And really back in 2012, we developed the WAMP, or the Water Main Asset Management Plan, to really do 3 things: compare system reliability for our distribution system, determine our replacement needs, and then identify and prioritize water main replacement projects in the long term. And kind of what we came up with was that by 2027, we will, if we follow the plan, we'll have 25 of the remaining 33.2 miles of cast iron water main replaced. And so we've long known we've had problems with cast iron pipe. Moorhead, one of the reasons we did the WAMP was...
Excuse me, Chris, there is a PowerPoint right at the end.
Yep.
It's the last attachment to this agenda item. If you want to kind of follow along, we kind of lost Casey to a family emergency, so we don't have it for the people at home. But you do have it on your iPads. If you look at that last item, it just says the PowerPoint slides for the meeting.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, there were a couple things that precipitated the Water Main Asset Management Plan. It was, number one, Moorhead had experienced statistically higher water main breaks than a number of other communities. And then we hadn't been meeting our replacement needs. So after we went through and modeled what our replacement needs are, we haven't met those needs for the better part of 10 years. So, you know, and I think the symptom of not meeting those needs was the increased number of water main breaks that we've experienced over the past 10 years. So really, kind of what we've done, 2014 was the first year that we implemented the Water Main Asset Management Plan, and we achieved just slightly under 8,000 feet of replacement. And we've had to get really creative, and we were recognized this year at the Trenchless Technology Conference for some of our creativity in terms of utilizing a number of approaches for water main replacement. And if you look at the next slide, it just kind of shows that we've used a number of different methods to meet our replacement goals in 2014 specifically. And the reason we've had to do that is because the city has kind of backed off some of their street rehabilitation. Since probably 2011, they haven't done as many street rehab projects. That's when we're most efficient to do water main replacement projects. So we've had to do some different trenchless techniques and a lot of different trenchless techniques to do it in a cost-effective and efficient way. But, you know, I think our long-term goal, as I mentioned, 2027 is the target for getting those remaining 25 of 33.2 cast iron miles of cast iron pipe out of the system. And one of the things I wanted to briefly touch on, and the next slide kind of addresses it. One of the questions that we've had, I think, is one of the questions the commission has had for me and other members of the staff are, you know, should we accelerate this plan? Should we accelerate the amount of replacement that we're doing? And I just wanted to take a shot at illustrating kind of what would be the rate increase associated with accelerating that plan. So I'll walk through kind of slowly on this particular slide, but you'll notice the pre-2014 funding levels called out at about $400,000 of funding for about 2,500 feet of replacement per year. And that blue line represents Moorhead Public Service conducting the replacement. So Moorhead Public Service does the most cost-effective replacement that we can do. So we've came up with an aggregate number. We looked at a lot of data and assigned a per-foot basis of cost for what it takes for Moorhead Public Service to do water main replacement. So that's why that slope of that blue line is significantly lower than the green lines. So the next green line is contractor replacement. And that gets us up to where we're at in terms of our water main replacement goal. So in that 8,000 to 10,000 feet, that's where we're at in terms of funding and in contracted allocation of replacement. So we do right now about 50% MPS, 50% contracted water main replacement. But the cost for contracting it out, even though we have utilized some alternative technologies, are still higher than what MPS could perform the work at. What I wanted to illustrate, and this is where it maybe gets a little confusing because it took me a while to think about, is what the cost would be if we wanted to accelerate past that 1% or 10,000 foot of replacement per year basis. So you see this kind of pale green contracted replacement plus additional staff, and that could be additional Moorhead Public Service staff or additional consulted staff. And what I'm trying to illustrate here is when we get past that 10,000 foot threshold, two things happen. The costs increase pretty significantly, and then on the secondary axis on the right-hand side, I just wanted to point out the amount of rate increase that would be required to meet those amounts of replacement. So if we wanted to significantly, let's say we wanted to hit that 15,000 foot mark, we'd have to do a 35% rate increase, and you could spread that rate increase over how many years, it doesn't matter, but that would be the aggregate rate increase that it would take to get to that level. I'm assuming all contracted, pretty much all contracted services, because there's a finite limit to the amount of replacement MPS can do with internal
Well, let me ask
staff.
you this, since we're looking at doing construction over a number of years, not just the next 5, 10 years, but probably forever, because you're going to be both installing new services and you're going to be installing or repairing or replacing old services. Are we at a juncture where we should be looking at the possibility of adding our own construction services as a part of the department? Would that be cheaper for us than going out and contracting for those same services?
You know, I
We
don't
have the
think so.
equipment
I don't
for a lot
think
of it,
so,
don't we?
because it's a kind of, the way I look at it is an economies of scale thing. So you can't just add 2 people and get that same percentage amount of work, because you have to add additional facilities and additional equipment to get that, to keep pushing it above where we're at. And if you can do that, but it's going to require some capital investment in equipment, machines, lockers, the whole thing. So it's not just, we can't just add bodies, for example, because we've got, right now, essentially a crew of 6 people with enough equipment for 6 people to do what they need to do, and then
Have we looked at it from a business plan standpoint as to what it would cost us to add those facilities?
I haven't done an in-depth analysis of that. I mean, that's certainly something we could investigate further. This is my...
And I'm just throwing that out against the
Yeah.
wall. When you look at these rate increases, and you know that the impact of high rate increases is going to truly bother some of our large customers who've
Right.
already complained about rate increases.
Certainly.
And so is it worthwhile looking at?
I mean, I guess if you're going to go that direction, you're going to add, there's going to be rate increases if you're adding people internally or if you're contracting it out. I mean, I think there's going to be some significant rate increases no matter how you approach it. If you do it either way, there's going to be some significant rate increases.
Since this is just a conversation, then I'll just jump in and ask questions of Chris as well. It is interesting because, we made a decision, the commission made a decision to move up to a 1% replacement rate, which was significantly more than what we had before. So now is the time to look at if we would want to do a permanent, or, not permanent, but like a permanent increase in staff to meet that 1% rate. So, like Chris said, we can look at it some more. My question, if you look at the blue line, and you take the blue line out to the existing funding level, that gap between the green and the blue line that you would get is a significant amount of money, if I'm reading the graph right, you know,
Having trouble
because.
with the graph?
No, I'm not having trouble with the graph, but I was,
Just thought I'd
yeah.
ask.
And that's a question for,
Be a significant difference in the positive, right?
in the positive.
Yes.
So I mean, it, you know, the assumption is we can extend that blue line and be as efficient as we are with current employees that we would be with 4 more, say. And you could see a significant increase, even if you have employees that aren't necessarily as productive during the wintertime. Whoops, excuse me. So I mean, it's something we could investigate further.
So if I read the blue line correctly, does that mean with 6 people, we do about a mile? You know, we need to get a metric in this country, so how many feet in a mile anyway? So we do about,
So we're going to change everything so that you could understand.
that is exactly the case.
How many
So-
kilometers is that?
What, 1.6? Don't. So right now, the blue line tells me we're spending about $600,000 with 6 people of our own, and we do about 1.25 miles per year with those 6 people.
Correct.
Yeah, I think we need to look at, I agree with you. I mean, if we know we're going to have 10, 15 years of construction ahead of us here, maybe we just look at the financials, see, does it make sense for us to add another 6 people to do 2.5 miles a year, whatever,
Yeah.
you know, or does it not make sense?
And we would have some time too, because the Sims project is for the next couple of years, right? So we wouldn't add those probably this year or next, because we're spending all our money in that project jointly with the city. So,
You know, and I wasn't throwing that out there, Ralph, other than it just struck me as we're looking at this, if the cost of contracting those services is getting precipitously higher, is it worthwhile for us to look at, you know, adding our own construction aspect to our existing utility, which we could, by the way, subcontract to the city for some of their work if we needed to keep people busy.
But the biggest issue you're going to have is the winter, right? I mean, we know that in 3 or 4 months, we will not have people working on digging.
Well, except for those that have to repair
But that number
Water.
should go, number should, every year should go down then.
as we
As
get rid
replace-
of that old pipe.
It should go down.
Well, except by the time if you're done doing that, you're going to start replacing the new stuff you did.
Well, the assumption is that the PVC is 100 years, right? I mean, knock on wood here.
Yeah. I
But
mean,
is that
it's
100 years
30-year
in these climate conditions?
Yeah, yeah. It's resilient. It's 30 years. I
Can
mean,
we
we're
get that in
looking.
writing from you?
All right.
Yeah, okay.
It's 30 years of this type of replacement. I mean, that's what we're looking at. And so, I mean, we could look at it internally and take a look at the business plan. And I guess what I just wanted to add was that you'll find that cities approach this a number of different ways. I mean, I would say the majority of cities contract out 100% of this.
How much of that is because it's easier?
I
mean,
mean,
I
it's
just
a
posed a
lot, there's a
question.
lot that goes into it. I mean, it's the union
mean-
contracts you have in place, it's, you know, the labor market that's around you. I mean, there's so many different things that go into
But
it.
once you put those specs together, sometimes it's easier if you're sitting in a municipality to say, well, let's go out and see if we can get somebody to come in here and give us a good bid to do this for us. That's easier than actually going out and doing the work. And it may be far more expensive. That's the only reason I throw that out there. I mean, there's other people far brighter than me sitting around the table who might think otherwise, but I think it's at least worth
Well,
thinking about.
The other thing we should look into as well, I mean, I do agree we should at least look at make a plan and see whether it makes sense from a financial perspective. The other thing is, can we go to a contract and say, listen, for the next 10 years, making up the numbers, don't get hung up on numbers. For the next 10 years, we want you to replace 2.5 miles of our pipe every year, right? Can we make a longer-term agreement, for that, or it doesn't make no sense at all? Instead of going year by year and lock them in. I know with this limitations.
Joe was going to comment too. I saw him reaching over for. Okay, Les?
I don't think a contractor would give a bid on 10 years.
He wouldn't give a bid, but he might lock himself in.
Well, I'd be surprised. You know, if we look back 10 years to 2005, economy was bumping and everything else, and 3 years later, it went, that was only 3 years.
Understand.
Yeah. This long-term stuff is really tough to plan for.
My only comment on the getting or hiring more people or whatever, I've been here 30-plus years, and I've seen the size of the town grow. What is it going to take for future employees? How many do you think you'll have to add? If this is a 30-year plan, and with the growth of the town, how many more employees are we going to have to add just because of the growth of the town?
The future growth.
Right.
An interesting comment was made to me last week by somebody who is really in a position to know, that said that what's going to happen in West Fargo is that West Fargo is going to find itself in a position that they will not be adding any more residential properties in West Fargo. They are going to be blocked out at about a 50,000 person community, which means that people who want to live in this proximity to Fargo are going to be looking either at Moorhead or Fargo, as long as Fargo has that growth capabilities. So yeah, I think we should definitely be looking at the potential there of where we're going to go from a growth standpoint and what we're going to have to do. I mean, West Fargo is going to be looking at incentives for business growth as opposed to residential growth, because quite frankly, there's more money in that, but they geographically can't handle any more. John?
I think from what I've heard, there's another dynamic to this, is that we tried to coordinate our water replacement with road work done in the city. And if we are proposing to go to 3 miles versus 1 mile, and the city is not going to be having that work scheduled, we're going to have a conflict of interest. So if this is going to continue, there has to be a lot of coordination with the city as far as what work is going to be done. And if we're going to escalate, maybe they need to do the same, if it makes sense.
Well, I know in the past that's been a problem, even going back to Cliff McLean days, in terms at least of the communication between the city and public service, and where you're going to be doing this, where you're going to be tearing up, can we go in the same place at the same time? But, yeah.
Traditionally, what had been done, when they did do more road rehab, I mean, MPS would do their 5,000 to 6,000 feet, and then the city would do, so we wouldn't be contracting out as much. I mean, we'd be utilizing the city's contractor, probably paying a little bit less than we would doing it as we currently are right now.
Has the city made a decision that they're going to be doing less road rehab? I mean, is that an affirmative decision that's been made, or is it just the way the dice have rolled?
I think it's just the way the dice have rolled.
Okay. Because driving around the city, there are streets that need rehab.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I think about 11th Street, when you go from Maine down to MSUM, that's a interesting field to drive through.
When the city wants to grow, I mean, we're going to look at adding new pipe, right? And that's the same 6 people, I assume, right? Or somebody you're going to hire.
Yeah, I mean, something we look at from time to time. We added somebody, I think, probably 5 years ago. We added a person just because of that additional growth and additional focus on asset management of our existing infrastructure. So, I mean, we have made additions in the past to compensate for that, and we certainly would evaluate that going into the future.
Where is most of this cast iron pipe right now?
Between 20th Avenue South and 15th Avenue North.
Okay, so that stretch.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we have been having more and more problems in recent years.
Basically, yeah, it's really well documented in the Water Main Asset Management Plan, but yeah, basically from 2011 to 2014, we've probably increased from 60 to about 80 or 90 per year, which is significantly over the long-term average, which was about 40 or a little bit over 40 breaks per year. So, I mean, that's really what precipitated the development of this plan in the first place, and I think it's a great step. And when I go to these conferences and talk about what we're doing in Moorhead, people say you have a really good plan, and I wish I had that type of plan in place in our community. I wish we could get that kind of funding.
Well, and we've been doing that for a long time. I mean, Cliff McLean instituted that many years ago.
That's correct.
And Rolf really sort of pushed us toward trying to accelerate those things. But I don't think there's a city in Minnesota or North Dakota that doesn't have similar issues. Possible exception of Grand Forks after the flood, when they did a lot of rehab up there. But, I mean, all of us are facing these same infrastructure issues.
Well, and the other concern I have is, and again, I may be totally off here, is, I mean, if we ever, with the growth in the city, we need to get the pressure down to the outlying part of the city, right? Fire protection being number one. If we have an intermediate area that has weak pipe, which we do, right around the power plant, increase the pressure, and, we'll have issues. And we'll get the pressure down there, but it will blow part of the piping on the way. And we just need to fix it. My question is, what's the most economic way to do it? I mean, I would hate to have, 6 more people and then have them have nothing to do. But on the other hand, we know for the next 10, 15, or 20 years, we have pipe, because after cast iron, we have the asbestos to take out, right? I mean, there's 25 or 33 on cast iron, number 15 or so on the other stuff. There all these stuff to be done, and then maybe the PVC goes. By the way, Oak Port is all PVC, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. So I think.
But it's 25-year-old PVC.
Well, we'll find out very quickly how it works, right? So I think we should at least look at whether it makes sense to increase the number of our own people doing it. I understand we would need more machinery, but again, this is now a 40,000 person town. Right? It may easily be 50,000 if things go 45 now. We at 45 now? Wow.
He wouldn't like you. He wouldn't like you.
No, he's a politician. So I think it makes at least sense to look at it. I mean, we don't want to bloat this organization, but if it's more economic to do it, I think we should look at it and see. What do the 6 do in the winter right now? What do the 6 do in the winter? I mean, they do the digging the holes for the brakes, I assume, right?
Brakes, services, they assist with water plant maintenance. So we do most of our water plant maintenance between November and March. So
Are they kept busy?
Oh, absolutely, unequivocally. I mean,
So nobody's sitting around having a cup of coffee?
Yeah, I mean, we have a long list of service orders to complete, curb boxes to push down to grade. I mean, there's no shortage of work for the 6 that we have. That's not the issue.
With the earlier discussion that we had as far as finding bench strength is a challenge, no matter what industry that you're in. Kind of thinking out of the box, if we are looking at a need, can we have like apprentice programs that if we have staff or people that we have a build-up in the summer, that during the winter season we can do some training for them to fill our other needs? Or like, for an example, if they're water, can we train during the winter for them to be an apprentice lineman, or anything out of the box here, thinking here to meet those
Something
needs?
that hasn't been done before?
Well, it's got to be done somewhere, but, I think we're going to be challenged from what we can see about staff for many years because of our aging work group. The not enough of the people coming in because of the perception that if you have to physically work, it's not an attractive position to have. So we got to build our own resources, and how are we going to accomplish that? But so if we, I don't know, like I said, apprentice or training program or whatever, if we can hire those people for this job and give them training to fill our other needs, we will have history with those people, and we'll know if they're good enough to invest into, because that's what I'm looking. You got to invest in your people to keep them.
Well, and the other part of that is that I think that we also have to rebuild, if I might, loyalties within that employee group as well. There was a time when I first started, of course, that goes back to, I almost had hair, but you go back at those days, and there were people who have been here, more public service like Joe, 30, 35 plus years, and good people who still come back and visit with us and are proud of their association with Moorhead Public Service and the work that they did while they were here. And I think we, in addition to doing whatever we can in the compensation levels, I think we also have to do whatever we can to not only train people, but to keep them here with us as long as we possibly can. And of course, if the Bakken goes crazy again like it did recently, then we lose a lot of those people in a tight labor market. But this is not a bad place to work. But I think we should be looking at whatever alternatives are available to us, and moving forward on a more accelerated basis, to me, makes a lot of sense if it becomes affordable. but that may require us to expand what we have internally. As loath as you are to add people, Mr. Schwant, this might be something that you might at least want to investigate. I mean, if somebody else can go out there and do this from a contracting standpoint on a private basis, I don't see why we can't do likewise, because we've got a lot of pipe to replace.
I want to add to what John had to say about cooperation with city projects and our projects, because what was it, a couple of years ago when we did Main Avenue, and a year later, the city came and closed the street again, and that's a serious concern, because those people that used Main Avenue were upset one year, and then all of a sudden, they were upset year two.
And most of them have memories.
And they have memories. And John's point is very, very valid, that we need to cooperate with what the city is doing. And I think all of us, even if we weren't sitting here and somebody tore up our street this year, and then somebody else from the same organization, the city,
Come out into
tore
my
up the
neighborhood.
street again next year, or even the year after, it would not be a good thing for us to do. Second point I'd like to make is, right now, 45,000, you said, 44? Okay. 1,000 people in Moorhead. I talked to a realtor not long ago who sold a house next door to me in 8 days. He said that's the longest that he has had a house on the market this year.
Even going.
8 days.
Even going to the north side, which is disadvantage, as you all know.
Right.
My wife pointed out.
No, this is south side where
Yeah, I
the good
understand,
people
but
live.
along 11th Street, they put up a sign and the houses are sold in a couple days.
Yes.
We had one sale in our neighborhood in five
Well,
hours.
that
5
tells
hours.
me that Moorhead, with the city council, what the city council has been doing, and economic development, and all the other players in the market, we have good things going. We don't want to all of a sudden start raising rates in either water or electricity, because even though that is not necessarily the biggest expense of owning a home, it is the one you see every month.
It is an expense.
Yes, it's an expense. So we have to remember all of those things while we're doing this. I'm not against speeding up the thing, but at what cost are we speeding it up?
Well, I rolled up into, we have to maintain the sanctity of the system. The system has to work every second of every minute of every hour of every day. If we were talking about a park, or if we were talking about spray painting electrical boxes, you got it, right? But when we need that, when we need that money at Pactiv, you know, because there's a fire of Pactiv, then it needs to be there now. And I'm with you. You know, and maybe we don't do 5 miles a year, maybe we do 2 or 3 miles a year, but I think we need to look at it. We need to look at it from an electrical perspective as well, right? What's coming at us, and I get it. I mean, we don't want to raise rates unless we have to, but I think this is one of those things where we have to.
Well, you know, and looking
And it
at
may
that.
be the time to do it.
It may be time to do it, right?
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah, I'm not arguing against you. I'm
Got it.
throwing other points of view out.
Yeah.
You know, and we're all very, very mindful of recent discussions with large users. That we do
Also
not, that
true.
we do not want to leave the community as much as we can possibly keep them here. And those large users watch those rates like a hawk. And they watch them from locations that are very far away from us, so there's not a lot of loyalties. And we have to be mindful of that. You know, one of the good things that happened is that we were able to, you know, work out what our Gang of Four did last year with the city council and the transfer costs. But, you know, maybe we have to look at a policy standpoint to shifting some of those costs away from the large users who are already paying a hefty share of the cost of operating our utilities, and see what we should do there as well. I hate to say that, but maybe it's something we have to look at our priorities and our policies.
Although we do have smaller users that go away to Arizona and stuff that still complain about what
We
their
have some people that are
current
gonna-
rates
they're gonna
are when they're
complain
not
no matter
living
what.
there.
Yeah,
We had an event today. Our headquarters is in downtown Fargo. Power went out. It took the company 4 hours to come back up. And I can bet you at that point there was not going to be a discussion on rates. It was about get us back up. right? And it's not 4 hours that the power was out for 4 hours, but the power goes out and you have to restart things, and it takes a long time to do. And again, I'm not saying that we go crazy here, but I think we need to look at it and we need to be rational about it and do as much as we can.
Well, we've been proud about reliability for a long time. I think that Travis can do better on the electrical side. We want to get,
How many
we want to get to the 5 nines. And he just hasn't gone over that particular hurdle yet. And, you know, and we have we have a great water system as well. And you're right. Joe Blow comes home, he wants to be able to turn on the lights, go take a hot shower, and do whatever he wants to do, and not worry about it. Didn't mean to say Joe Blow, but, you know, I mean, we have to do it, and if it's cheaper for us to do it ourselves, it seems to me we should look strongly at doing whatever we have to do to continue to do it ourselves.
I'd just like to address Les's question or statement about the concern regarding coordination with the city. Just to make you aware, like specifically for the Sims project, we are participating with that project so that it hopefully will be very near the time that the water main replacement occurs, that the street restoration occurs. So I want to say we were just very considerate and thoughtful of that consideration when we developed the plan for that project. And we're aware of their long-term. They have a similar plan for their pavement management. We're aware of their long-term pavement management plan. We work with them and make sure that we're not missing out on any opportunities for replacement. So
I was just reemphasizing it.
I think it's a great point. And Maine was a little bit off because the state didn't get a bid, right? It wasn't an issue with the bid. It was coordinated, but the state didn't get the money, so we had dug it up already, and they ran out or something.
Yeah, it was out of our hands.
Yeah, it was out of our hands.
I understand that, but
The point is well taken.
the business owner on Main Street who had his street torn up twice.
Yep.
Doesn't care whose fault it was, even if there was no one at fault. Yes. So our perception out there in the community has value to it.
So, Mr. Schwant, now that we've sat here for about 40 minutes talking about these issues, what have you gleaned from our conversation?
Well, I think Chris made a nice presentation here.
Chris always does.
I always appreciate graphs from my staff, and I think we gleaned graphs.
That's for the commission, yeah.
Graphs. And I think we gleaned some further analysis that's necessary to determine if there's an opportunity to, you know, maybe do a little more water main replacement at the same cost that we were looking at. So, I mean, I think we can take a look at that. I think
even do the same, but reduce the cost by having our own people. At least let's look at the numbers. And see what it says, and then look at the other factors: machinery, locker room, benefits, what have you. But at least let's, I think, look at it and see what it.
You know, and I think it also, you know, you mentioned it. We really watch our personnel around here. I mean, the locator position today and these. I mean, it makes some of us cringe to look at adding staff because, you know, it has to be efficient allocation of resources. And, you know, so I mean, this conversation made us so maybe look at that just a little bit differently.
Well, and I don't think there's a member of the commission who doesn't thank you and Nancy for looking long and hard at the financial aspects of what it is that we do. But our business is to sell a couple different kinds of widgets. We sell electricity and we sell water. We've already made it our goal to do so with the utmost reliability for our consumers, which are residents of the city of Moorhead who do in fact own us and to whom we're responsible and hopefully responsive. But at the same time, you look at the realities of the construction season, which is short, except it can be extended by overtime and everything else that goes along with it. But it's very short here. And so if you miss the opportunity to get something done within that short window of time, that impacts you along the way as well. And sometimes those costs become secondary to getting the job done. Because we do, I mean, Our primary job here is to provide the services to the people of Moorhead as best we possibly can. And sometimes we should be mindful of those costs, but sometimes we have no choice but to accept, a higher cost in order to get that accomplished, I think. Les? That's just me, of course.
I think I know the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyhow. I know in the electrical world, there are new and cool ways of doing things. You can do wind, you can do solar, you can do whatever. Are there innovative, I think John alluded to it as well, are there innovative things in the water division that can be done? I think you mentioned a couple of them, the differences in digging up streets and putting down new pipe, pushing through the new pipe instead. Are there things like that? I have no clue.
Yeah,
Well, I think we've done that, at least, going by the area around Hornbachers, I think we did some fairly exciting things over there.
But are there other things in the new and innovative way of doing things that we're not aware of, is what I'm asking.
Go ahead. I would say that there's a comfort level when you come to new technology. I think MPS's culture is that we don't want to be on the leading edge because we are a utility. And I would think on my perception of how we do water main replacement is we're actually very close to the edge of what's new and what's happening, and what's efficient. So, just based on some of the things we've done over the past couple of years, we've been featured in 3 magazines for the different projects and different styles of work that we've done to be efficient and to get it done fast and with minimal disruption to customers.
If you were a seed farmer, you meant a test plot.
I know sometimes the developer of new technologies, in order to get it out there, have been known to offer substantial discounts as well. They did in the computer world. I'm guessing they do in other technology worlds. This is a session where we throw out things, and if it gets shot down, it hurts my feeling not at all.
Well, the other technology that we used was at the river pump station, and that's going to move into the distribution system as well, and it has. And it worked very well in the river pump station. I'm pointing at Ralph because I remember you were down there, where you basically put in PVC and with steam, inflate it and harden it, and basically inside line pipes. Now, that's another technology, that other than pipe bursting, that can be used. It's a little different because you've got a person's service every so often that you've got to go back in and dig up anyway. But
there's a bit of a balancing act too with what you were talking about, Les, because we have in the past had been on the leading edge. I think Nancy can go to at least 1 or 2 computer programs that didn't meet our expectations, we got a little bit too early and cost us a lot of money. Sometimes those same developers, put these things out in the marketplace, not only are they testing, but go along with where Chris is, being out on the leading edge can be real lonely from time to time.
We are a utility, and we do take that responsibility of providing reliable service very seriously. And we try and do it as efficiently as we can. Joe and Travis and I, this Thursday, will be having our kickoff meeting with an engineering firm that's going to be doing our electric master plan. And, we bring up these types of discussions to the consultant to make sure they understand our culture about the 5 nines or the 4 nines. And it is our culture, and we will continue to do that. Joe makes sure that things are well maintained. Travis makes sure they're well designed. We push toward that, but we are a utility first and foremost. We don't like those outages that happen in downtown Fargo today, and neither do they. But we've done a better job at being reliable, and on Thursday we'll have that meeting again, and we'll tell them.
Does that have anything to do with a whole lot of overhead lines in downtown Fargo? Squirrels?
Yeah, squirrels.
Another squirrel bit the dust, huh? John?
I'd like to go back to something that Bill had said about running a very efficient operation. which definitely we do, but we have some potential risk being if you were too efficient. Because if you don't have enough people in place, when you have somebody who leaves, like in the lineman area, your efficiency goes way down, and whatever you gain by being so efficient and so tight, it's going to be burned up in a hurry because of lack of experience and delays and taking longer to do things. So I think that's another area that maybe in your human resources area that we need to, encourage our staff not to be so tight, if you will, at the detriment of our future.
Well, and there's obviously huge safety concerns that go along with just, not only, you have to look not only at the financial aspects of it, but when you're dealing with live electricity, when you're dealing with underground services where people can be collapsed on if they don't properly take the safety measures you're supposed to. If you're not doing those things with a properly trained staff, there are issues. You're right.
And the other thing is just, the pure growth, right? We've gone from 30-some thousand to 45,000 in, 10 years? Right? We have grown not by just a couple of percentage. And that's the other thing is too. There's so many things you can do with 58 people when you have 35,000, and there's so many things you can do when you have 60,000. So, the pure growth of the customer base and the size of the city itself, because distance is an issue for us. We may have to look at, to John's point, we may have to look at it from that aspect as well. There's efficiency, but then there's also looking at, well, what are we going to do if this goes to 60,000 in the next 10 years? How many more miles do we need to lay of new pipe? How many water towers do we need? How many people do we need to actually run around and make sure that we, even a customer visit will take twice as long because you're twice as far away from where you used to be. So I think that's something we should maybe account for as well. Actually, I don't think we should maybe account for that. I think we should account for that. I would like to account for that.
And you've always been the accountable type.
Mr. Chair, may I offer a comment here as well? When Bill summarized what we're going to talk about, he had 5 different things, and I don't think there's any way we can talk about workforce as a 5th item. It has to be included in the discussion of the 4 previous talked about, whether it's water or electricity or administration or whatever it may be. So for our next session, when the electrical people come on, I believe they're probably next, try and incorporate the employee needs. And where we can, there may be places where we don't need as much of an emphasis with our staff. I don't know. I think Nancy has reduced the number of staff under your area because of efficiencies or technology or all of those kinds of things. But what I'm trying to say is whenever we get into this session, I think the workforce has to be part of each one as opposed to a separate. I don't know what the rest think.
Well, I think, and you said it well, I think when it comes to our staffing requirements, I don't think we can be dictated to by either the financial aspects of it or just the numbers ladder that you put in front of us. I think we have to look long and hard at the needs.
Correct.
What do our people need to accomplish their jobs safely and efficiently? And that safety is absolutely first. I was sitting on this board at a time when we almost lost an employee in a cave-in, and safety is absolute must as far as I'm concerned. But so dealing with the dangerous commodities that we are, I think that the needs of those employees far outweigh some of those other considerations, at least from my perspective.
Except for Joe.
Except for Joe. Joe's on his own.
I'm going to stand up for Joe because nobody else does.
So when it comes to the asset, on the water side, the asset, so is water main replacement the number 1 issue, and what about the pumping, the current pump fields or the well fields, and maybe new ones? Is that sort of the next step then down the line, or?
we touched on this in the drought supply presentation we had last time, and I think from my perspective, I'm just trying to place the water division in 10 years time frame that we could actually replace our South Buffalo field and add a new, possibly save-in well field or something somewhere in between. We looked at a few different alignments, but my long-term approach at this point is to buy about 10 years out there, and then probably we'll have to do something in terms of replacement and the addition of another well field. And so it's balancing how much do we do on water main replacement, and when do we start that drought supply project to make sure that we don't have big rate increases, and that it's kind of done in a stable way.
What about the plant itself? I mean, if we go to, what's the number, 60,000? Make up a number. We're going to be at 60,000 people.
Well, that's what Chuck was doing.
I know. Let's say we're at 60,000 people in 10 years, 15 years, right? I mean, what can the water plant itself actually provide? I know it was overbuilt, or not overbuilt, it was built larger on purpose, but I mean, how much can we actually supply?
It's a 10 MGD plant. The new one is a 10 MGD plant. So, I mean, I think we're looking at more than 10 years. The high service pump station will actually go a long ways in terms of supplying peak demand. So, I mean, we'll actually be able to supply about 16 MGD from that facility, more than we can create in the plant. So, I mean, that will, I believe, put us out 15 years in terms of any significant plant renovation or addition. But, anything can change. If we get a big industrial customer, if we get something that needs some capacity, yeah, I mean, we'll have to definitely do some modifications. I think Williston, for example, some of those communities out there have had to remodel every single year or almost every single year to keep up with growth. So, I mean, if you do experience those types of growths, I mean, that's what we'd have to do.
Just so I know, is the next one of these sessions on water supply before we go to electrical? Is that your plan?
No, the last one was water supply. This one is kind of water infrastructure.
Okay.
The next one could be, and we haven't determined it yet, because we've got the classification compensation item.
Yes.
That can be a regular agenda item. I'm thinking it probably is going to take a little longer. We can determine that on Friday. And then...
That might be a topic for this group
Yeah.
in this setting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's where I hear Les going.
Yeah, I mean, but the other two items are, electric infrastructure,
Right.
i.e. the master plan that we're going to meet on Thursday. So we'll have some new information, be able to answer some questions on reliability and some of those things. Tell you kind of what's coming up, because we're going to do a detailed study on the electric side.
Okay, on Friday, if we decide that probably should be a session similar to this, I would move that ahead of
The electric. Yep.
If that's fine. And are we satisfied that we've had enough discussion on water?
For tonight?
No, we need to have a discussion on the supply issue.
Okay.
On the
That-
pipeline.
That's what I thought, too.
that's-
Okay.
Right,
That's-
I agree.
But that's not tonight.
I don't know when we
No.
want to do
No.
that.
I don't think you're prepared for that,
No,
are
it's
you?
not tonight.
Are you prepared to start moving toward that discussion with us? The water supply related issues?
I certainly think we are, and I think there were some unresolved elements from the
Okay.
last discussion, and I think it would be timely, at your request, we bring it whenever you'd like in terms of.
So
Because we didn't really have a discussion about that the
Right.
last time.
No.
Right.
We had a great presentation.
Yes.
But-
So
You have
we're
the
looking
background
at,
information.
Yeah.
we're looking at 2 meetings
We can bring it back 2 meetings out.
to bring
Yep.
water supply back.
Yep.
Certainly.
So would you like at our next strategic planning sit-down meeting to discuss the employee-related things, or do you want to wait until after we've talked on Friday?
I think we can wait till after Friday
Okay.
because our agenda doesn't come out before that.
Yep. Yep.
But I have a feeling it might be a very good agenda item for this session.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
And then when
Okay.
we have discussion on the supply issue, I think, Chuck, if you and Heidi for sure could be here,
Yeah,
because that's going to be
Yeah, please.
one of those fundamental decisions we'll have to make. So
Yes.
it's a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
going on
these
there.
are major policy decisions that we'll be coming up with when we get into the water supply issues, and we would like your input strongly, Chuck.
So, sorry to be so slow here, so on the water management asset side, do we have questions? Are we okay where we're going?
I'm okay.
I think they've got more work to do.
Yeah, that's my impression. I mean, I think your point about looking at developing something internally with staff is something we could certainly do in-house. I think that's something we could evaluate. And maybe bring back some examples of how a lot of other utilities do it, and just provide some background and perspective on our approach versus maybe industry-wide.
But one of the things that you're telling us as a part of your discussion was that when you go to conferences, you're sort of the guy out on the edge. Other utilities are looking at you and say, oh, you've got that? You're doing that? We're not doing that yet.
We've always been that way.
Yeah, I mean, but there's, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, so from that standpoint, when you talk about going to other utilities and seeing what they're doing, you're really sort of teaching them in a lot of instances.
I mean, there's other people, bigger cities that do it different ways too. And so, I mean, I don't have all the answers, even though I think we are doing an awesome, fantastic job.
Yeah, you are.
Our mission is to be a regional leader, and we are.
Exactly. In order to do that, we have to meet the needs not only of our community, but of our employees to make sure that we are really getting there. And that's why these conversations that Les was alluding to are good time.
And leaders that quit learning are soon not leaders.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't want to be so far out on the edge that you just fall over the edge, you know?
And you can take that as a voice of experience.
One of the things,
Mr. Chair.
Anything further? Chuck?
When I said 45, I know this is being taped, so when I said 45,000, I meant north of 40 with the Oakport annexation.
Okay.
Just to clarify that.
We knew that there was a little political puffery going
Yeah.
on there. But
And then I just have a basic fundamental question about this. Is there any way 14th and 12th can get fixed soon? I've been getting questions about that.
Yeah, that's actually that's a city.
Is that the city?
It's a city project.
Okay.
We completed.
Yeah,
We completed
I'll
in September.
so actually, we were going to ask you the same thing, Chuck.
Okay. I'll bring it up to another.
That's a sanitary sewer.
Is it sanitary? Okay.
I was driving over there.
Bob
The
Z.
same thing popped into my mind.
That's another one, yep.
I'm getting a lot of questions because it's just like a narrow strip of pavement that your wheels bounce off. So.
Include 17th and 12th with that, too.
Okay, I'll put that down.
To quote my wife when we were driving there the other day, keep the tires on that little space. Yeah. Is there anything further for the good of the order?
Good
Thanks,
meeting.
everybody. I
Yeah.
think this was very productive. Good idea.